Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, I would very much like to continue our discussion through the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2020. And today, I'd like to start the conversation about the specific works that are included in the magnificent set, which is called Martin Scorsese's World Cinema Project number 3. The film that I want to focus on today is from 1968, and it is a film from the filmmaker Humberto Solás. And this is given spy number 1045. The name of this film is LUCÍA. Humberto Solás's magnificent work, LUCÍA, is an ambitious and quite absorbing drama that can be described on one aspect of it to be a historical drama. It can also be described as being a direct political-based drama. It can also be said to be a period piece. It could also be said to be a very witty, comic, domestic drama. And it can be described as being a film that focuses on the relationship between men and women, and also particularly the role of women in the Cuban society over the course of 3 different time periods. So in fact, there is so much here. And I think one of the primary reasons why there is so much here is, in fact, there is so much here. And we can see this, I think, most directly in the way that the film is structured. Now, the film has a triptych, or a 3-part structure to it, in that it focuses in on different periods of time, 1895 and then 1932, and then a year in the 1960s. And these are very significant points in the history of Cuba, and also the stories that are associated with each of these periods, I think, gives or sheds light into various thematic and political themes, as well as social themes that are explored in the narratives that are constructed for each of the periods. So 1895, we have the War of Independence against Spain, and so those themes are brought to the fore in this first part. And then the 1932 section is, of course, focusing in on the government of Machado and the efforts made, the revolutionary efforts made against such government and the results thereof. And the context is placed in a relationship setting. And then finally, in the 1960 period, we have a modern setting. And we have, set against that modern setting backdrop, a domestic drama played out. And so the modern concerns of the time are in the air as we have this domestic drama. And so we have these 3 different time period structure. And what makes it even more fascinating, of course, is that we have different characters in each block, and all focusing in on one female central character in each section. Each such character is named LUCÍA. And so we have the namesake of the film, or the namesakes, as there are 3 different characters in each given time period that is given the name of LUCÍA. And these are the central characters in this particular work. So as you can see from the outset, the structure itself is fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating, and it's fascinating on a number of different levels. First, we have the notion of this episodic nature of the film, because these are, in essence, their own films played out and combined together into this structural narrative technique, which I think lends itself very prominently to compare and contrast types of analyses. And so we can see the focus on the relationship, the intimate relationships between men and women, and these particular characters that meet and fall in love and get into relationships and have issues with their families and work and live their lives in the relative classes that they find themselves in. And amid this, we have their dramas and sometimes the tumultuous aspects of their relationships played out in the foreground of the narrative. But we also have, directly connected with this, the political implications of each of the respective time periods that are not just background, but they become inextricably linked with the direct focus of the narrative drama. So this is to say that this kind of a human drama, of the drama of relationships that is also based on sexual dynamics. This is linked most directly to political movements and also the dynamic of revolution that is portrayed in each of these specific sequences in such an intimate way, such that we can see a parallel that is being drawn, namely that what is happening in the macro political sphere has direct implications and almost metaphorical intimate connections with the daily life or the domestic living or the stories that are played out between family, between brothers and sisters, between men and women, between lovers, between husbands and wives, and that sort of thing. In other words, the political becomes the intimate in each of these foras, and that makes this film an extraordinary achievement. And it really gives the political the very intimate, and thus makes the political very immediate and very much charged indeed. And another way to say that is that anything that happens in the background has an immediate effect, even on the minutiae of the daily lives of these characters, LUCÍA in each of the narratives. And that means that I think that's a very bold statement, because it means that there is no separation between what happens on the revolutionary front on a macro scale and what happens on the intimate scale between characters or among characters. So it's almost like the revolution on a macro scale is linked to the revolution of an emotional or intimate scale. And I believe that linkage is fundamental to a film like LUCÍA. The other thing, too, that is remarkable about this is the focus on female characters. And this idea of having LUCÍA, each of the LUCÍAs in these stories, be the focus of the film, or their respective parts of the film, really gives rise to an exploration of the position of women in the societies that are being depicted. So just at the beginning of, just prior to the start of the 20th century for the first part, and then the 1930s for the second part, and the 1960s for the third and last part. And we see the various roles of women expressed and captured in each of these different time periods. We might see some of the characters in jobs. We might see other characters in different strata of society and their daily lives and the way they live and the places that they live and the family wealth that they might be relying on or not in some cases, etc. And we therefore see the way they interact with the people around them, how their daily lives are either connected or maybe not so connected with the broader political implications of the world outside, and the revolutions that are taking place in the context of the historical backdrop. Because the word revolution actually means a different thing in different time periods, although it is still an overarching thematic revolution that is universal throughout. And that is another complexity of this film that is really remarkable. But to bring it back to the characters, we see therefore a separation, but we also see that what they go through, the LUCÍAs, what these characters go through, each of them respectively, does have metaphorical and does have direct political implications to the world outside of them. And so it's interesting to see how their worlds blend into or evolve or turn into the realm of the political. And when I say the realm of the political, I mean how their actions affect or have specific implications with respect to, say, the revolutionary efforts made against the Spanish in the first part, and there are really direct plot elements that play a major role in that aspect. And then we have the 1930s and the efforts made against the Machado government, and we have the role of LUCÍA there, and how her efforts and what it is she goes through, in fact, has a very major function in that component. And then the third and final component, which is the 1960s, we have the LUCÍA there and the notion of education and self-worth and the notion of freedom that is being expressed there in the context of the domestic drama that's played out in a kind of love triangle that is played out in that film. And so we have as I say, another expression of the macro and the intimate, but this time focused in on the role of women in the society as contextualized by each of the relative stories of LUCÍA, LUCÍA, and LUCÍA, which makes this film a remarkable examination of these particular times. And it's also a remarkable work because it is an example of supremely confident filmmaking. The filmmaker Solás, Humberto Solás, is a master because he is taking different subject matter, different stories, but he has combined them in a way that makes it all integral and united. And he does it, he's able to distinguish among the different time periods in terms of filmmaking style, film stock, the certain looks that are nuanced and different. So each has its own character and flavor. But at the same time, there is an overarching connectedness that exists and that is so well established in terms of the balance among the stories. And I think that has a lot to do with the filmmaking prowess of Solás and what it is he's able to achieve, which then lends itself very nicely, I think, to the implication that, as I say, what we are dealing with, on the one hand, are three distinct stories of three separate types of revolution, here, here, and here. But the fact that we have this intertwined story like this means that what Solás is implying with his cinema is that this is in fact also the overarching or united aspect of the notion of revolution on a universal level. And that notion of revolution it holds true throughout the entirety of the work. And when I say the word revolution, as I say, this means political revolution, but it also means a kind of emotional or an intimate revolution, because revolution is also inherent with change and is also inherent, therefore, with drama. Because if we think about the essence of human drama, the essence of human drama is confrontation or collaboration or change or interactions with others. And if we think of it that way, then the way in which the universality of revolution is being expressed over the course of these three stories and these three time periods thus makes for the further clarification that revolution is a multifaceted word that has many meanings in the hands of a filmmaker like Solás, and the skill and craftsmanship of the artistry of Solás, and how he's able to express these different facets and still at the same time express a kind of universality among the stories is brilliant. He's able to give us different flourishes, different modes of filmmaking that really have a stylized effect here, but also have a muted effect there. But still, the purpose becomes clear when we sit back and we absorb the entire work as a whole. And that is, I think, a very difficult thing to achieve, and he has achieved it in this work with a great sense of style and aplomb. A truly breathtaking work that is LUCÍA from 1968 by Humberto Solás. So that is the remarkable work, which is, as I say, spine number 1045 on the Criterion collection. This release, by the way, as I indicated, is part of the World Cinema Project number 3 box set, and it is the first of these films. And it is available in the set on, it's called a dual format edition, which means it's available on a Blu-ray and also on a DVD. So you're getting both formats here, which is wonderful. And as far as the supplements are concerned, we have, before we go there, the presentation is also purported to be based on the restoration, which is a really lovely looking restoration, and it sounds really crisp and direct. And so it's a great presentation. And with that, we also get supplements. We get the 3-minute introduction by Martin Scorsese, and he speaks about Solás, and he speaks about LUCÍA, and he gives some, I think, very brief but still essential information that serves as a good primer for this film. He doesn't give anything away in terms of spoilers, so I think if you are interested, the Martin Scorsese introduction might be a good place to start prior to watching the film LUCÍA if you're going to be watching it for the first time. And then there is a second supplement included with LUCÍA, which is a 33-minute kind of documentary, which has a lot of interviews that are included, and it's focusing primarily on LUCÍA and Humberto Solás, and it has interviews with Solás himself, and also has interviews with some of the stars and others. So for example, it has videotape interviews with Raquel Revuelta, and it has Elinda Núñez and Adela Legra, and these are the three actresses who play LUCÍA in each of the relative parts of the film, as well as other interviews. But we get a sense of Solás and his working method, and working with these actors, and what their experiences were working with him, and also working on a film that is incredibly important and significant. And to get their perspectives some years after the fact is fascinating. And the supplement ends in an incredible way, paying respect to the works of Solás as a whole, such that we get a sense of this filmmaker. And for those of us who might be interested in trying to explore more of the world of Humberto Solás and the world of Cuban cinema as a whole, then I think this is a great place to get some background, and we get some other titles of other films as well. So again, for anyone who is interested, this is a wonderful jumping off point for further exploration into the cinema of Solás, and also in the cinema of Cuba as a whole. So a wonderful supplement to have for anyone who's interested. And that is the extent of the supplements there. And I should end this discussion with the essay, which is included in this book. The book, I should say, has a cast and credits list on page 2. for the film LUCÍA, so that's good to have. And then among its other writings, it has an essay specifically directed to LUCÍA, which is called In Progress by Dennis Lim. It starts on page 20 of the book and goes forward. It is a brilliant essay, specific in its detail, and it goes into a real rich discussion of the various historical contexts for each of the sequences of the film. And also it goes into a sort of history or background of filmmaking, Cuban filmmaking during this time. And it mentions the Instituto Cubano del Arte e Industria Cinematográficos, or ICAIC, which is an important body in terms of filmmaking in the 1960s, and so this forms a very important component that led to the creation of this film, LUCÍA by Solás. And so. Lim makes, among his really great points, one of the things that I think is so fascinating, and I love how he describes it, is that he describes a film like LUCÍA as trying to achieve what he calls two imperatives. And to explain it in my own words, but my words are very poor, and so I would suggest that you take a look at the Dennis Lim essay directly for this. But the way that he describes the two imperatives of the film, and Solás's mission, if you were, it would be that one imperative would be to try to capture the moment of the people that are experiencing these various modes of revolution over these specific time periods, which he calls to capture in cinematic terms the lived-in experience of these people. And so that's one imperative. And the other imperative is to try to what does he say? He calls it the memorialization of history, and how we look back on history and how history is memorialized by cinema, and how important that function of cinema is. And we see that, I think, very vividly by the mere fact that this film is covering different time periods within its narrative structure. And so this discussion of Dennis Lim's here, and the discussion of the two imperatives of the film, I think, is one of the many great points. And it leads to a lot of implications about the import of this film, and how we as viewers should try to approach it as audiences here in 2020 who are consumers of this particular product, and how we must keep in mind the time periods, and also the historical contexts, and what that meant on a historical level, but also what that meant on an intimate, emotional level for these characters, and how that is a cinematically beautifully realized stand-in for the experience of the nation of Cuba, and also the people that lived there over the course of many years. So that makes this essay, the Dennis Lim essay, to be truly miraculous and wonderful to read indeed. So I would suggest that very much. So in conclusion, my friends, this is the great film from 1968, LUCÍA, by Humberto Solás, which is included, as I say, in the wonderful World Cinema Project number 3 box set right here. This is spine number 1045. You get a DVD, and you get a Blu-ray, and you get this and many other films, and you get a number of wonderful supplements, plus a wonderful booklet. So please check it out if you can. It is a glorious example of one of the most effective expressions of cinema from this time period. Unforgettable stuff, absolutely unforgettable stuff, and it's epic and intimate at the same time, and that's the stuff of great cinema, my friends. This is the film from 1968, LUCÍA. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now, and so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time, and until we meet again, cheers.